Hey everyone, since I'm a lighting designer, I wanted to show everyone just how much lighting has changed throughout the history of theater. It's pretty amazing to see where we actually came from and how technology has changed the face of performance. Another great point I wanted to hit on is the exponential growth lighting has seen in just the past 30 years or so. I'm currently working at Florida Repertory Theater and will be using their equipment to show how lights have been constantly evolving, especially with our growth in tech. To understand how fast lighting is changing now, it's important to first get an understanding of where it all came from. Encyclopedia Britannica has excellent information on how lighting was used in the very first theater spaces. These theaters were those of the Greeks, and the lighting they used consisted of only the sun. It seems pretty straightforward and simple because, after all, the most important part of a performance is being able to see it, but the Greeks were very creative. Their theaters were built into hills and were open air. This allowed the sunlight to be able to illuminate the stage very easily. What I thought was cool was how they were able to use the sun to their advantage. For instance, they would time out a play to have the intense murder scene happen at sunset. So this would give them a more red look overall and change the mood of the scene. On top of that, the Greeks would also get mirrors and reflect the lighting onto the stage to give consistent light. It wasn't for hundreds of years until lighting began to evolve and change more with theater. In the late 1500s, more and more we are seeing indoor theaters being built, but that left them unable to use sunlight. Larry Wilde wrote an overview of stage writing, and in that outline we see the first time candles were used by the Romans in theaters. These candles would give general illumination to the stage and allow a crowd to see the action. It's also safe to say that this is when the air quality in theaters began to take a drastic dive. Also, safety. It isn't too surprising to have theaters burn down when you have hundreds of open flames everywhere. Despite the negatives, people began devising how to get more creative with candlelight. This is the first time we see people dimming the lights. In the history of theater, Brockett describes a system of pulleys and holly pipes. These pipes were essentially lowered over to the candle to dim the general lighting. This is when we can begin to see people start doing things that resemble what a modern lighting designer would do. On top of dimming, they would put the candles behind colored glass. These colors didn't work that well, but it is exactly what we do in theater today to recreate mood and locations for shows, which is pretty cool. So remember how I said air quality was bad in older theaters? Well, it only gets worse. In the early 1800s, gas lighting was introduced to theater in Philadelphia. Encyclopedia Britannica says that the introduction of gas lighting gave immense control to stage lighting, much more than we have ever seen before. It's a lot easier to be able to dim the lights, and they can easily alter the color by changing the gases they use. It isn't all great though, so now instead of hundreds of candles, you have hundreds of gas flames burning all around you. So naturally, instead of just burning down, you would explode. But it didn't stay terrible forever. Luckily, the introduction of electricity and the invention of the incandescent lamp by Joseph Wilson really changed the face of theaters, and it is the platform for all the theater we see today. This gave us more control than anybody could have ever imagined. Beautiful dimming, color, and variability became invaluable to performances. That and it was a million times safer. I think it is important to note that it took us hundreds of years to make it to this point. Now, with how fast our technology is growing in our society, we can witness lighting going through terrific changes as we speak. I personally believe that we are in a period of transition that will change how lighting is done for all of theater. Actually, looking at these types of fixtures may be able to showcase my thoughts a little better, so now I will take you through about 30 years of lighting units to demonstrate the strides that we've actually made. So here we are in the historic Arcade Theater in downtown Fort Myers, Florida. Fun fact, this place is about 5 minutes away from one of Thomas Edison's labs, where he actually helped to create the electricity we use to produce our shows. So here I am going to demonstrate about since the 70s of how lighting has changed in the form of a LECO. All of the information that I'm about to tell you about these lights are coming from the data sheets from Altman, ETC, and Leviton. Traditionally in theater, we call these types of lights LECOs, but if you want to get technical, the Backstage Handbook defines them as an ellipsoidal reflector spotlight. What makes these lights is the fact that they shoot out a circular beam, are able to shutter cut, which takes part of that beam away, and you can fit it in different areas, as well as has a location to put a gobo, which is a pattern. So now that you know what a LECO is, we're going to start all the way back in the 70s. This light right here is an Altman 360Q 6x9. As you can see here, it shoots out a circular light onto the floor. This light comes from a 750 watt lamp inside the back of the unit. Now, this lamp takes a lot of power and isn't the most efficient light. So therefore, it's pretty wasteful. We call these a single body unit. Reason being is because this light will only shoot one size of beams. Right now, it shoots about 36 degrees. So if I needed a light to be smaller for a certain situation, I would have to actually take this light off and replace it with another one. The next light I have to show y'all comes from the 80s. So 10 years later from the previous light, and it has a lot more features that make it more useful. The biggest new thing that came about with this color trend is the fact that you can change the barrel. In the last light, you had one light that shot out one beam angle, and that was it. But now, you can unscrew these knobs, take out the barrel, and replace it to give multiple different beam angles. This thing takes 1,000 watts for its lamp to shoot out anything. And also, on top of that, the light it actually outputs is less than that of the 6x9, therefore making it extremely inefficient and wasteful when it comes to electricity. The next light we have is one of the most popular lights in all of theater, and there's no doubt that every single show that you have seen has had one of these lights behind it. It's none other than the Source 4 LECO. This light came about in the late 90s and pretty much just did everything amazingly. It had the same barrel from the last light that can be adjusted. It has a very crisp and beautiful light, but most importantly, it only takes 570 watts in their lamp. And with that 570 watt, it is more efficient than the 1,000 watt light. This is what makes them so popular. So this light is small, easy to use, and has been so amazing it has just become the industry standard ever since it was first introduced. This next light was made by the same manufacturer as the last one, and I believe is personally going to revolutionize theater as we see it. So this light takes about 170 watts to operate, which is hundreds less than anything else. The reason being is because it is an LED fixture. It's kind of difficult to see the effect that this type of lighting is going to have on theater as a whole if you're not really in the business of lighting. But I think it comes down to two main things. For one, if we had a full lighting rig with the previous fixtures that I showed you with the lamps versus having a lighting rig that is full LED, the full LED one will use less than 1/10 of the power that you would originally have been using, which for one, that's awesome for theater costs, and two, it's great for the environment because you're using less. The second thing is with the lights with the lamps that I showed you, they have one color, and in order to change that color to create mood on stage, you would use gels. So if you wanted blue, you'd put this blue plastic sheet in front of it, or if you wanted an amber, you would throw this. But now, the designers have millions of possibilities and can hang one light that can do the job of hundreds. And that, I think, is going to be one of the biggest things that we see in shows now that is going to be changing. So to recap, it took us thousands of years as a society to go from lighting theater with sunlight to just gaslight. But now we've gone from having a one color light to having millions of color possibilities in just one fixture in only 30 years. I think with the growth in technology being as fast as it is, there's absolutely no telling where we're going to be in, or who knows, even 20 years, and how it's going to affect theater. I think that was worth thinking about, and I appreciate everyone for sticking through this far and watching. Thank you.